What happened in your office that became the stuff of legend? I was working at a startup in Silicon Valley, and our founder was this incredibly successful guy worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He wasn't at the office much since he had several other businesses to manage. We were still a small team back then, and he knew each of us by name, some of us even personally from before the company started. One day, this young woman who worked for me was sitting in her cubicle, completely focused on her tasks. The founder walked over to her desk, just making his usual friendly rounds, and asked, "How are things going?" Without looking up from her screen, she replied, "Fine, except people keep interrupting me." He gave her this strange look and walked away. As soon as he was out of earshot, the entire team rushed over to her desk in disbelief. Everyone was asking the same thing. "Did you just tell Bob, not his real name, to back off?" They were absolutely shocked. She hadn't really processed how it sounded. She didn't mean to tell him off. She was just making casual small talk about her day and people interrupting her work. But he took it as her saying, "Don't interrupt me while I'm working." Thankfully, he was a great guy with a sense of humor and thought it was hilarious. But there were definitely some nervous folks around the office for a while. After that day, it became part of our company lore. Every new hire would hear the legendary story of how she basically told our mega-rich founder to back off and get out of her face. The unofficial workplace motto became, "Don't mess with Alice," not her actual name. She accidentally became our office hero that day.
What's the funniest way you've outsmarted a teacher? My chemistry teacher, Dr. Miller, was notoriously strict about his no late work policy. One Friday, he assigned a massive lab report due Monday morning. No exceptions, no excuses. That weekend, my grandmother was hospitalized, and I spent both days with family. Sunday night, exhausted, I had barely started the assignment when my laptop crashed, deleting everything. Monday morning, I walked into class empty-handed but with a plan. Dr. Miller began collecting papers, his scowl deepening as he approached my desk. "Where's your report, Alex?" he demanded, already reaching for his red pen. "I submitted it digitally last night, sir," I replied confidently. "I didn't receive anything," he snapped. "That's strange. I sent it to dmillerwestridge.edu as instructed." His face froze. "That's not my email, but that's what's listed on the syllabus," I said innocently, pulling out the paper he'd distributed on day one. There it was, a typo. He'd written his own email incorrectly. The class went silent as Dr. Miller examined his mistake. 25 students watched with bated breath. Finally, he sighed. "You have until the end of the day to forward it to my correct address." As I left class, he muttered, "Check your syllabus for next semester, Alex." I nodded respectfully, while mentally thanking whoever owned dmillerwestridge.edu for not responding to my "Is this Dr. Miller's email?" message I'd sent the night before.
What's a bet you made that you wish you never won? My coworker Jake was this obnoxious gym bro who wouldn't shut up about his superior genetics and how he could outperform anyone at anything physical. Every single lunch break was him flexing in the break room mirror and lecturing us about his workout routine, his protein intake, his recovery methods. Dude even brought resistance bands to work meetings. The worst part was how he'd challenge people to arm wrestling matches or push-up contests, then go on these victory laps when he inevitably won. He'd literally measure his biceps with a tape measure he kept in his desk drawer and announce the results to anyone within earshot. One particularly annoying Tuesday, he's going on about how he has the highest pain tolerance in the entire office and could handle literally anything physical without breaking. He's telling the story about how he once got stitches without anesthesia and didn't even flinch. I was so fed up with his constant bragging that I blurted out that you couldn't handle getting a tattoo of whatever I choose for a full hour without tapping out. Jake burst out laughing, slapping his knee like I'd just told the funniest joke in the world. "Are you serious right now? Dude, I've been wanting another tattoo anyway. This is easy money." I said if he tapped out or asked the artist to stop even once, he'd have to admit in front of the entire office that he wasn't as tough as he claimed. But if he sat through the whole thing without complaining, I'd pay for his expensive gym membership for 6 months. Here's where everything went sideways. I was thinking something small and embarrassing, like a tiny butterfly or maybe a cartoon character. But my girlfriend Sarah was there and jokingly chimed in, "Make it a portrait of his ex-girlfriend, that would be hilarious." Everyone in the break room started cracking up, including Jake. He was so confident in his pain tolerance that he shook hands with me immediately, saying, "You're about to lose 6 months of gym fees, buddy." The problem was, none of us knew about Jake's ex-girlfriend situation. I figured it would be some awkward high school relationship or maybe a messy college breakup, something embarrassing but harmless. When we got to the tattoo parlor that weekend, Jake pulled out his phone to show the artist a reference photo. The moment I saw the picture, my stomach completely dropped. It wasn't some random ex-girlfriend. It was this beautiful girl with the brightest smile I'd ever seen, and Jake's hands were literally shaking as he held the phone. That's when he quietly told us that Emma was his high school sweetheart who died in a car accident 3 years ago. They'd been planning to get married after graduation. He said he'd been carrying around her photo ever since, but could never bring himself to get a tattoo of her because he thought it would be too painful. I immediately tried to back out of the bet, telling him we could pick something else, but Jake insisted on going through with it. He said maybe this was exactly what he needed, that it might be therapeutic to finally honor her memory permanently. The tattoo artist, this gruff older guy with sleeves covering both arms, took one look at the photo and said he'd do the most detailed portrait work he'd ever done. He said it would take at least 2 hours for something that beautiful. Jake sat in that chair for the entire session, tears streaming down his face non-stop, but he never once asked the artist to stop or even take a break. He just stared at the ceiling while this incredibly detailed portrait of Emma slowly appeared on his forearm. The worst part was listening to him talk about her while the needle buzzed. He told us about their first date, how she used to leave little notes in his locker, how she wanted to be a veterinarian, how she always smelled like vanilla perfume. Every detail made it more heartbreaking. Turns out Jake had been struggling with grief and guilt for years, basically throwing himself into fitness obsessively to avoid dealing with his emotions. He'd never properly processed losing her, and had been carrying around all this pain while pretending to be this invincible tough guy. When the tattoo was finished, it was honestly the most beautiful piece of art I'd ever seen. Emma's face looked so realistic, it was like she was right there smiling at us. Jake just stared at it for 10 minutes straight, crying harder than I'd ever seen a grown man cry. Now he visits her grave every week and talks to the tattoo like she's really there. He credits that session with finally helping him start healing, and says it was the best thing that ever happened to him. I technically won the bet, but watching him sob through those 2 hours was the worst victory of my entire life.
My fiance's ex died and my relationship is in shambles. We'd been together together 3 years. Wedding was 6 months out. I was 28, he was 31, and we'd finally saved up the $15,000 deposit for our dream venue. Invitations were already printed. I had one hard rule about exes from day one. No contact, no pictures, no stories, nothing. He agreed immediately. Said his past was his past, and I was his future. Then her mom called on a Thursday night at 9:47 p.m. while we were watching some cooking show. She had stage 4 skin cancer, 3 months to live. Wanted to see him one last time before she couldn't speak anymore. I watched his hands shake as he held the phone. His face went completely white. Part of me wanted to say no, but how do you tell someone they can't say goodbye to a dying person? What kind of monster does that make you? I told him fine, but I'm coming too. Non-negotiable. We met her at her parents' house the following Sunday at 2 p.m. She was 29, looked maybe 90 pounds, bald from chemo, wearing a yellow cardigan that hung off her shoulders. She told us she'd gotten her diagnosis 2 months before they broke up. Said the doctors gave her a year at most. She didn't want him watching her die or spending his life as a widower at 30, so she lied and said she didn't love him anymore. Made it clean. They held hands across the coffee table. His thumb traced circles on her palm like he'd done it 1,000 times before. She smiled at him with tears in her eyes and said, "I never stopped loving you. Not for one single day." He said, "I know." I sat there for minutes, feeling like a stranger watching someone else's life through a window. She died 3 weeks later on a Tuesday morning at 6:23 a.m. He got the call at work and came home at 2 p.m., walked past me without a word, and locked himself in our bedroom for 6 hours. I heard him sobbing through the door. Since then, everything's changed. He cries when he thinks I'm asleep, stares at his phone during dinner, stops talking mid-sentence like he forgot I was there. Last Tuesday, I walked into the kitchen for water at midnight and heard him on the phone with his mom in the living room. We talked about baby names once. She wanted Rose for a girl, James for a boy. We could have had that life, Mom. We could have been a family. She would have been an amazing mother. I stood there in the dark hallway, water glass in my hand, feeling my entire future crumble into dust. They'd planned baby names, talked about their future kids. In 3 years together, he'd never once brought up children with me, never asked what I'd want to name our kids. I tried to push it down, told myself he was just grieving, that it would pass, that I needed to be supportive. Then yesterday, a package arrived. Brown box, no return address, left on our doorstep. He opened it at the kitchen table at 7 a.m. while I was making coffee. It was from her sister. A leather-bound photo album. Their entire relationship documented in 200+ pictures I'd never seen. Concerts, beach trips, Christmas mornings, her laughing in his arms. He lifted it out like it was made of glass, opened to the first page, and his whole body went completely still. Then he started crying. Not sad crying, that nostalgic kind where you're remembering something beautiful that's gone forever. That smile people get when they're somewhere else entirely. That's when something inside me broke. I dropped my coffee mug. It shattered on the tile. I heard myself screaming things I didn't know I'd been holding in. That I felt like a replacement. That his dead ex had more space in our relationship than I did. That I couldn't marry someone who was clearly in love with a ghost. That I'd spent 3 years trying to be enough for someone who wished I was somebody else. He just sat there holding that album, tears running down his face, and whispered, "She's already dead. Please don't leave me too." Like I was just another woman abandoning him. Like my 3 years meant nothing more than her leaving. Like I was a second loss instead of a first choice. I packed a bag right there, threw clothes in randomly, drove to my sister's apartment at 11 p.m. and sobbed in her spare bedroom until 4 a.m. That was 4 days ago. He's called a lot of times, left 12 voicemails, texted 30+ messages. The last voicemail came this morning at 6 a.m. while I was lying awake staring at the ceiling. "I know I messed up, but she's gone, and you're here. You're my future. Please don't make me lose both of you. I can't survive losing both of you. Both of us." I'm sitting here realizing I spent 3 years building a life with someone who never let go of his last one. My sister keeps asking what I'm going to do. I don't know. The wedding venue deposit is non-refundable. Our families have plane tickets booked. 150 invitations went out last month, but every time I close my eyes, I see him holding that album with that look on his face. I don't think I can marry someone who wishes I was somebody else.